All right, welcome everybody. We'll get started now. Thank you so much for attending our Lunch and Learn webinar called Resources and Activities for Literacy Students in Hybrid Spaces. By way of breaking the ice, I'd encourage you all to type into the chat your favorite literacy resource or activity that you found effective in hybrid learning environments. Whether that's a digital tool, specific activity, website, or even a book recommendation, we'd like to hear what's worked well for you. So feel free to type that into the chat now, and we'll start building a pool of ideas together. And of course, as we get into the presentation, I'll be making a lot of suggestions to add to the resource bank. As you do that, I'd like to introduce myself and my colleagues. So my name is Marianne Barker, and with me today is Paula Sampang and Jenica Henry. They'll both be helping moderate the question period following the presentation. On that note, feel free to put your questions into the chat throughout the session, or you can save them until the end so that we can get to all of them. Before we get any further, I want to acknowledge that TIES operates on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, which today encompasses the Indigenous people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta. That's the Siksika, the Piikani, the Kainai, the Tsuut'ina, and the Stoney Nakoda First Nations, and the Northwest Métis Homeland Region 3. So please take a moment to acknowledge the traditional territories of the land you currently inhabit. So this research is part of a 3-year project run by the Research and Program Development Department at the Immigrant Education Society in Calgary, Alberta. The project is called Hybrid Education for Literacy Learners Optimization, or HELLO. You can see our organization's research team on the left, and we partnered with researchers at the University of Michigan and the University of British Columbia. Our research was conducted in the context of both our own organization and the Edmonton Catholic District School Board. One of the outcomes of this project is the development of a toolkit for hybrid instruction with adult literacy learners, which you can see on the screen. I'll give you a minute to use your phone to scan the QR code, which will give you access to the toolkit. Throughout this presentation, I'll be presenting information from this toolkit. To give you an overview of today's presentation, I'm going to start with a quick review about who literacy learners are before diving into equipment and digital platforms for hybrid spaces, and then the resources and activities for hybrid teaching. Then we'll have some time for questions. So first of all, who are literacy learners? It's important to understand some of the complexity of literacy learners' backgrounds in order to understand the educational implications for hybrid instruction. So literacy learners are those who have interrupted education, usually between 0 to 8 years of formal education, which means they have cognitive gaps in literacy, numeracy, print and multimodal text, knowledge of the world, experience with problem-based learning, and they're often unfamiliar with classroom routines and dynamics. The majority are women, and they are usually refugees. So when we consider these complex learning needs, it might be tempting to triage and eliminate the digital world, which is pretty unfamiliar to these learners. However, our research strongly advocates that we must not steer literacy students entirely away from technology and digital skills. And there are 2 main reasons for this. First, we live in a digital world, so providing literacy students some guidance as to how to use technology actually means enabling them to participate in society. And second, we consider hybrid delivery to be an equity policy, and literacy learners often have complex needs such as caregiving responsibilities, maybe disabilities, mobility challenges, or other circumstances that make it difficult for them to attend class in person. So hybrid delivery is a solution for students who have barriers to attending class in person. So with that in mind, let's get into the equipment and a few digital platforms that will enable hybrid delivery. In terms of equipment, a desktop computer or a laptop are essential for the hybrid classroom so that you can connect to other devices such as a smartboard or overhead projector. Whether you use a desktop or a laptop will come down to personal preference, and each have their pros and cons. A smartboard or overhead projector allows you to display remotely attending students on the classroom screen, which helps you integrate them into the classroom and creates opportunities for interaction. And of course, You can share your screen and display classroom materials so that those in the class and at home can be connected and engaged. A secondary camera can be placed somewhere in the classroom so that remote students can see the entire classroom. And this also allows you as a teacher to see the whole or to stay at the front of the class rather than having to turn your back on the student who's attending remotely or to always remember to direct your attention in two ways. Also, a secondary monitor can be useful to have so that you can display remote students on one screen and classroom materials on another. And of course, smartphones are an indispensable device when it comes to the hybrid classroom. Depending on learners' digital abilities, you can have remote and in-person students scanning QR codes, participating in polls, chatting in the class group message, and smartphones are devices that students are likely to be more familiar with than computers, so mobile devices are a really helpful way to engage learners in the digital world. And depending on your access to other devices, you might want to explore the capabilities of ring lights to improve lighting, headphones if your space requires it, or tablets and styluses. Beyond the hardware, to successfully offer a hybrid class, you'll need to use digital platforms to host remote students. You can use a video conferencing app such as Zoom or Teams. As you all know by now, these apps come equipped with lots of tools that once you teach them to your students can support classroom activities. So these are things like chats, polls, whiteboards, or screen sharing. Our research also found that messaging apps are a key enabler for hybrid classrooms. As I mentioned, phones are a more familiar device for students, so messaging apps can facilitate group communication and classroom activities. Finally, there are a number of websites and programs that are specific for ESL learning, and we expand on many of them in our toolkit. The resources for hybrid teaching section of our toolkit spans three categories: resources for literacy ESL, resources for building digital literacy skills, and resources for teachers' professional development. In the first category, these are the resources outlined on pages 16 to 20 that are specific for literacy level classes. These offer opportunities for interaction and digital skill development to bring together online and in-class students beyond just sharing your screen with a worksheet or picture displayed on it. So I highly encourage you to check out these pages in our toolkit, which provide information about each resource, and the toolkit also gives examples on how to use each one in your classroom. For the sake of time today, I'll just be highlighting or demonstrating three of them in today's session. First, the Literacy Center of Expertise, then Learning Chocolate, and then Classroom Screen. The Literacy Center of Expertise is a collaborative hub and information center supporting ESL literacy service providers. The Literacy Center offers professional development, highlights best practices in ESL literacy, and is a veritable goldmine of content and resources for literacy teachers. So I'll walk you through some of the parts of their website. Once you get to the website, you can click Get Started, and you'll see a list of online tools, including useful websites, teacher training, curriculum materials, and research. Click on these pages to explore resources and materials designed by partner organizations and find some online professional development opportunities. Today, I'll go to the bottom of the screen and click Resource Bank to show you some of the materials that are prepared by the Literacy Center. The Adults Learn to Print modules will help learners recognize and practice writing each letter of the alphabet. You'll find modules divided by level on a range of topics, as well as PBLA assessments, which are linked to online forums to record student progress. And today, I'd like to show you the reading skills stories, which include a range of phonics and vocabulary language targets. So suppose you wanted to target the short vowel You can click into Phonics Stories and then find a module that suits the language target you're looking for. And each module is interactive and includes visuals, audio, and supplementary instruction, as well as practice to supplement your teaching. So I'll play through the start of this lesson so that you can see kind of how it looks.
Mira has a flat. Amira has a van. She is mad.
And the stories are strategically designed to include a lot of the target vocabulary or phonics that you are looking to address with your class. So you can listen through the whole story, and then you'll get to a section where you can actually read it as well.
Let's
And
read.
in this section, you'll read the text as well as playing the audio.
Amira has a van.
And so on. The story continues. And after you get through the story, there's a section for practice.
Let's practice.
In the practice section, there's actually a video included by a literacy expert who provides instructions for the students on how to pronounce this sound. I'll play the start of this video for you too.
This story has a lot of words with the sound A. The sound A is written with the letter A. It can look like a capital letter A or a lowercase letter A. Let's practice making the sound A.
And she goes on to explain how the mouth should look when forming this sound in order to make the correct pronunciation. After this, we come to some practice where you can hover over the words in order to hear the sounds
J, A, K.
and have students practice that as well. And at the end of the lesson, there are some sight words to continue practicing those sounds. So there are tons and tons of modules like this on the Literacy Center of Expertise website, and I encourage you to spend some time exploring these classroom-ready activities that are created specifically for literacy students. The next resource I'd like to share with you is a vocabulary learning platform called Learning Chocolate. Learning Chocolate is full of themed vocabulary exercises that can help you introduce new vocabulary, and each lesson includes pictures and audio. So one way that you might do this could be to search for something that you're studying in the class. So for instance, maybe you want to talk about feelings with your students. Find a lesson that includes some feelings that are level appropriate and have your students explain or come to the front and click on how they're feeling.
Tired.
Similarly, if you were targeting the letter T, you can find a resource of words starting with T. You have to put up with the advertisements from this free resource, but there's lots of level appropriate vocabulary that you can use to practice the sounds. Or perhaps you were targeting body parts in your classroom. You can find tons and tons of resources that include body parts to practice. And beyond just practicing these words, by listening and looking at the pictures, you can extend your classroom activities to include perhaps a hybrid version of the fly swatter game, where students need to race to the board to circle vocabulary either in class on a smart board or at home using a virtual whiteboard. Or perhaps remote students can name the vocabulary and have in-person students point or walk up and click the audio for the words verbalized by online students. And of course, you can also ask students to practice writing or typing these words in their respective devices. So Learning Chocolate is a great vocabulary builder for students to use on their own or to use to extend your classroom activities. And the third platform that I'd like to demonstrate is called Classroom Screen. Classroom Screen is an online whiteboard that is useful for in-person and remote students to view simultaneously. When you visit the website, they're going to choose an automatic background at random for you, and you can choose to keep this background, or you can choose from the pre-selected already loaded options based on a classroom theme or routine, maybe something you're discussing in class. Or you can choose a more neutral background, and today I'll do this gray background. And then in a matter of minutes, you can set up your classroom whiteboard to focus on whatever it is you're discussing in class that day. So for instance, if the topic of my class was winter, I can put up a title. You can move it around wherever you like on the board. I can add an image, which if you have preloaded, for example, a worksheet on winter clothing, you can upload that and again, make it bigger. You can also use the draw tool and have students actually come to the front or use the smartboard to connect the matching exercise of whatever worksheet you're working on. There's also a poll function or a poll widget where you can choose to make a poll for your students to get them to kind of actively engage in the lesson. So in this case, you might type, "Do you like winter?" And we can give students 3 options. And then the students can come to the front and select whether they do kind of like or don't like winter. And it can be a fun way to engage them. Another helpful function of this classroom screen is the QR code option, which allows you to paste any website you want and it will automatically generate a QR code for your learners. So I've put in a website link to a easy beginner level reading exercise about the winter. You click generate QR code and students at home and in class can scan that and be on the same page. And beyond that, there's a lot of classroom management tools like these work symbols when you want students to be quiet or when you want them to work in groups. There's also timers that you can use to give students a timeline to work on something. So I encourage you to go and explore this resource. And of course, you can add or remove widgets based on what you're teaching. So go and check out which widgets might work for you and your classroom routine. Moving on to the digital literacy skills resources, here are several resources that we include in our toolkit that help teachers with developing learners' digital literacy skills. So I'd like to share a few examples of the Edmonton Catholic School District's Digital Literacy Progression Checklist. This checklist is an 8-page list of skills and competencies that represent the approximate progression of a learner's proficiency and comfort with digital skills. For example, in the green banner here, you see operating digital technologies is the category on the list. And in this section, the skills range from naming and using basic technological devices all the way up to using devices independently. And you can see on the left under classroom levels that the list helps inform you as to when you should be exposing learners to these skills versus teaching them and working on them and practicing them versus they should be more mastered and automatic by that point, by the time you get to CLB 6. Another category in the progression checklist is accessing information you see in this blue banner. And here we have digital skills related to understanding what a website looks like and how to navigate it. And that goes all the way up to skills like bookmarking websites and conducting keyword searches. So this is a really useful teacher resource that can help you set digital learning targets for your students. Next, the Norquest Basic Computer Skills modules provides a range of video lessons to guide learners through individual skills like using a keyboard, using a trackpad, using the shift key, etc. And finally, websites like typing.com or mouseprogram.com can give learners targeted practice with using a mouse or trackpad as well as typing. Last, the toolkit provides resources for teachers' professional development, and you can check these out on page 23 by clicking the hyperlinked titles. We have the e-learning toolkit from Bow Valley College, ATESL references and PD resources, as well as the robust amount of teacher resources and articles available on avenue.ca. In our final section of today's webinar, I'll touch on some of the activities highlighted in our toolkit that are intended to integrate digital skills while bringing together remote and in-class students to work together and engage with one another. We have some tips for boosting remote participation, which include nominating remote students, so it can be difficult to get the hang of reminding yourself that you have a student online, but nominating them will help engage them in the class as much as possible. Next, strategically pairing and grouping students according to your activity might mean pairing in-person students with remote students, or it might be pairing remote students together and in-person students together. Having icebreakers and classroom routines can create a sense of community and comfort in your classroom. So this could just be as simple as chatting about the date or the weather, or it could be having a color theme online each week. Or it could just be having students type good morning or how are you into the WhatsApp group message each day. Additionally, you should always ensure clear audio and image. It'll be much easier for remote students to attend and engage in class if they feel like they can see and hear what's going on in a clear way. Another way to feature the online class is to feature remote guests or host online visitors to share with the class. And last, it's good to get offline from time to time. And if your organization allows it, going for a field trip, whether that's to the grocery store to practice buying something, or whether that's going to a local community event, it can be a good way to help learners build community and get all on the same page once in a while. In terms of classroom activities to blend students together, our toolkit includes this idea bank on pages 51 to 52, and there are a number of activity ideas to inspire you. Many of these activities require very little prep, so they're ready for you to run into the classroom with. And I'll highlight just a few of them today, and I'll leave you to check out the rest of them on your own. The 4 activities I'd like to highlight are on the screen. The show and tell activity involves instructing students who are attending remotely to find an item from their home for show and tell. So you can give them some kind of theme or prompt like something green or your favorite food, and give them 1 minute to go find an item. Instruct in-person students to ask questions about the show and tell item, even simple ones like, what is it? Or what color is it? Or do you like it? For the choose an emoji activity, ask all of your students, in person and remote, to choose an emoji that reflects how they're feeling that day and to share their chosen emoji via the class group message. Follow up to see if there are any similar ones, and you can ask students why they feel sleepy, happy, in love, or whatever other emoji they chose. For the QR code quiz activity, you'll need to do a little prep ahead of time. You'll have to make a few QR codes and be ready to display them on your screen, and you could also print some for in-person students. The QR codes can be to local shops or restaurants like Tim Hortons, and instruct students to practice using their phone cameras to open the links to the QR codes and write down or share which store the link led to. And finally, the Pass the Mouse activity requires a Bluetooth mouse, and you'll need to display the screen that the mouse is connected to. You can give the mouse to the first student, give them an instruction, and then get them to pass the mouse to the next student, who then you'll give another instruction and they'll pass the mouse again. So for example, the first student might click on the music app, then pass it. Then the next student might click play on a song, then pass the mouse, and so on. So these 4 activities show you how you can make use of digital platforms, tools, and functions to bring together remote and in-person students in digital and language enhancing activities. Thank you very much for your attention today. Before we turn to the questions, I'd like to just remind you that our 3rd and final webinar is next week on Wednesday at the same time, and the webinar will delve into equity and the personal hybrid learning plan. At this point, I'll turn it over to Paula to moderate the question session.